Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. All I can say is it's hot here, and I'm sure it's hot where you are as well. So I really appreciate that you've taken the time to be with us this evening. I know in this hot weather, sometimes whiskey isn't the thing you really want to lean to, but we've got some fabulous guests this evening. So we're going to learn a little bit more about each one. Um, right, hopefully, we're going to introduce our first guest. They're going to introduce themselves and where they're from. So let's see if they can join us now. Look at
Hey
that.
guys,
How are
how
you
you
doing?
doing, James? Great to
I'm
see you
very
again.
good. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, really good. I mean, absolutely sweating currently. It's 34 degrees down in London. Don't know how hot it is where you are.
I think you're 4 degrees hotter than we are here. But there you go. By the shine on my head,
Oh, I wasn't. I mean, the shine on my head is really showing at this point. Yeah, I'm in a sweltering bedroom in a flat in East London at the moment, with like both doors open, trying to get some ventilation.
Oh, and we're going to try a whiskey that I might not go for in such high heat, but we're gonna go for it anyway. So could you introduce the dram that we're going to go for this evening?
Yeah, we're doing Highland Park Cask Strength, which is our non-age statement cask strength release, and this is batch number 4. So the thing to kind of really know with this expression alongside the core range of Highland Park is it's not non-age statement, so it's on the younger side when you compare to some of our other releases, but it's really high ABV. So we have quite a high filling ABV, and when it comes through in this non-age statement release, I think this one is 64.3%, something like that. So full, robust, punchy, really, but still really bright and kind of lively expression of Highland Park. And I think what this really shows is there's quite a lot of sweetness to Highland Park, quite a lot of richness, quite a lot of stickiness. So when you have a higher ABV, it really holds up really well. I think Highland Park does two things super well: high age statement, so like really extracting like good, rich tannic characters from the cask, and then high ABV where you get that sweetness balanced with some of that like big, punchy, lively, smoky single malt kind of character.
So straight away, there's two things I think we could really delve into. The first is a non-age statement, and then second, it'd be great to move into what ABV is. But first of all, with non-age statement, if you could tell us a little bit about what that actually means, and actually there are some advantages to a non-age statement as well. So that'd be great to
Oh
get a little
yeah,
more on that.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So I mean, if you're buying a bottle of single malt off the shelf, quite often it'll have a number on it. That number is an age statement. It simply means how long that spirit has spent in its cask and extracting flavor. It's a very heavily regulated kind of legal register for whiskey. So if you have something that says 10 years, you can't have any liquid under 10 years in it. Consequently, you get whiskies that are 10 years old, you get whiskies that are 18, 25, up to silly, silly numbers, some even older than me. But non age statement means that you can be a bit faster and looser with what you're putting in the bottle. That's not a bad thing. That means that really you give yourself a bit of flexibility with flavor. If you've got a cask that's really great, but it's quite young, you can still use it. So if you have a 6 or 7 year old whiskey that's showing real promise that you think you could bottle right there and then, you're not having to wait until you get a nice number on it. You can just put it in a bottle, signed, sealed, delivered, and do a beautiful little non-age statement release. With the non-age statements, you get a bit more of the early character of the whiskey, so a bit more of what makes the distillate, the spirit that comes off the stills, special. So if it's fruity and malty, you're getting a lot of that. If it's more about the smoke or the earthiness, you're getting a little bit of that. You're seeing the early life of the whiskey, and that's what you're getting.
I always like a non-age statement, and I sometimes like to remind people that although a cask itself is man-made, the wood is not, and
Yeah,
that can mean that you could have two casks next to each other, but one's going to take its sweet time, and the other one might be showing some promise really early on. And if you've committed yourself to an age statement, you're not going to be able to use it until it's reached that age statement. So
yeah. I mean, casks are natural products. One of the kind of cool and interesting things about whiskey is that a lot of the maturation is quite a passive process. So you're putting the whiskey to rest in a cask, and you will only really know where it ends up by tasting it and sampling it throughout its evolution. Some casks will give up loads of flavour and tannins and colour. Some will be a bit lighter, a little bit more ethereal. It's really the job of the whiskey blender and the whiskey maker to know how to use those casks, to know when something is cooked, so to speak, and like ready to go, or when it needs a bit more age. And actually, as a single malt distillery with quite a substantial repository of casks to draw upon, what we like to do is we have our high age statement stuff, and we have an 18, we've got a 25, we've even got a 30-year-old. But then this non-age statement release also lets us play kind of down this side of the field as well, and you create something that's a little bit livelier and fresher. And honestly, I love both. So I think probably cash strength and 18 are kind of my two go-tos within the entire lineup of Highland Park. One does like kind of smooth and refined and developed and dark chocolate kind of flavors really well, whereas the cash strength is big, punchy, a little bit smokier, really lively, effervescent kind of whiskey.
So that's great. So we did about non-age statements and what that can bring. But the second thing that you mentioned, and you mentioned it there again, is actually the ABV. So it'd be really great to actually break down what does it mean when we say ABV, and then also what can we get when that is higher in a whiskey, which is, I think this is a fantastic example of that. So I'll hand that over to
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. I mean, so unless a whiskey says, strictly speaking, unless a whiskey says cask strength on the bottle, someone has probably added water to it at some point. When you distill the spirit, even in whiskey, which is generally lower than a lot of other spirits, you're still talking 69, 70% when it's first made. Which, great, carries all the flavor, carries all the energy, carries all the distillery character. Probably not what you want in your glass at the pub or at home. But fortunately, particularly in Scotland, due to the climate, as you age that whiskey, it will actually slowly come down in ABV. Now, the reason for that is simply that alcohol evaporates more quickly than water. So you age something for a while and the alcohol will dissipate much more quickly than the water. It comes down. But even if you're talking about a 12 or 18-year-old whiskey, it's probably still a punchy 55, 60% when you bring it out the casks. With our core range, we add water. We want to bring it down. We want a nice kind of 40, 44% is our sweet spot. Lighter, sweeter, gentler, something that you can have a nice measure of, and it's not going to really blow your face off. The cask strength, we don't do that. So it's kind of designed to blow your face off a little bit. No water's added. It's purely what comes straight out of that cask. It is, in a sense, kind of the purest expression of Highland Park, of our whiskey. And that's what I really love about it. You get the most distillery character. You get the most of the essence of Highland Park.
Nice. And I'm always a very keen bean to get people to taste the whiskey straight away. And actually, we spent quite a lot of time explaining some different terminology there. So let's get on to the whiskey. What should we be tasting with this cracker of a whiskey?
Well, I think I never want to tell people what they taste, but I do think some of the fruitiness comes through. I think sometimes you look at a bottle of Highland Park, particularly some of the older designs with the kind of like Norse iconography, and you think it's going to be all smoke. But really, the smoke with Highland Park is a bit more subtle. It's a bit lighter. It's even got kind of like an earthy, kind of floral aspects to it. And what that does is it makes a lot of space for the kind of fruitiness to come through. I get a lot of citrus fruit, like more of the kind of orange, kind of grapefruit, fresh, kind of dark, kind of pithy fruitiness. Maybe some red fruits in there as well. Maybe not strawberry and raspberry, but kind of that kind of like bright berry kind of flavors are there. Nice kind of vanilla kick to it as well. It's got some sweetness. It's got kind of that kind of confectionery kind of vibe to it. And then there is smoke as well. It's subtle. If you're an Islay drinker, if you drink Lefroy, Lagavulin at Ardbeg, it's not quite as punchy and smoky and briny as those expressions. They have a very kind of specific flavour that's particular to Islay. This is more of an earthy, sweeter kind of smoke. But I think that's what's really cool about Highland Park is you see how versatile smoke can be as a component in whiskey, and it's such a key part of the DNA of Scotch whiskey. It's kind of a bit linked to place because of the peat you're using, which is what you use to smoke the barley. You tend to get different flavors, so the whiskey that you're making on Orkney is a little bit different than the whiskey you're making on Islay or Skye or the Highlands, and that really comes through in the kind of profile of the finished whiskey.
So that'd be a great thing actually to move on to. We have actually visited Highland Park in the past when we had Highland Park 12, but we do have a lot of new guests here. Highland Park is one of those really famous whiskey distilleries of Scotland, but actually maybe one that not many people have visited. So I wondered if you could paint us a picture of Highland Park, where it is and why it's so special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all whiskey, probably all spirits, to a degree, are kind of an expression of place. You're working with, I mean, if you even go further to a kind of global level, and you're talking about, why tequila and mezcal taste the way it does, or why brandy tastes the way it does, it's due to what grows there. It's due to the kind of culture and practices of the people that live there. And then on a kind of more micro level, when you kind of zoom into Scotland, the different regions of Scotland have slightly different kind of styles and flavors. Islay is obviously very well known as being kind of big, punchy, smoky, briny. Speyside, a little bit more of that kind of sweeter, has quite a reputation as making quite heavily sherried whiskies. We are from a series of islands called Orkney, so it's all the way on the very northern tip of the Scottish coastline. I'm down in London now, it's probably about 600 miles north of where I am now. We're one of the most northerly single malt distilleries in all of Scotland. And the landscape is really specific. It's not a place that a lot of people have visited, but it's really beautiful. In winter, it could be, it could be pretty dark, it can be pretty cold. Sunsets like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, pretty readily. But around this time, just because it's so far north, the days are actually even longer. The sun barely even really sets around midsummer, summer solstice, which is just past. And you've got like loads of wildlife, rare birds, seals. It's an amazing place to go whale watching. You've got all these different bays and some of these amazing seascapes and cliff faces. It is really like a dynamic and lively place. We've been making whiskey there now for 200 and I think 27 years now. So we take a lot of influence from that landscape, and one of the ways that is really important is the peat. So the peat is basically, well, it's almost like a clay. It's where the vegetation from the island sort of breaks down in these marshes and bogs. And for hundreds of years, people in the outer islands of Scotland would actually dig these out. They would dry out the clay, and then over the summer months, they would build up this stockpile that in winter they could use in place of coal. So they would burn it in their fires. They would heat their homes, smoke food, and they would use it to make whiskey. And that is a tradition that has carried on for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we use Orkney peat, which is a very particular composition. It's quite different from Islay peat. And because of that, carries different aromatics, flavour compounds. It's really, I think, what gives Highland Park its kind of signature character. So it's lighter, it's earthier, it's more floral. And what's really cool with the cask strength is I think you see it the best with the cask strength. It has a little bit more of that peated spirit in it. It's a little bit more smoke driven. We never want to be full, like, we want a really balanced profile for our whiskey, so it's not just all smoke. There's a little bit of fruitiness and sweetness. We want the cask to come through as well. But I think the balance on the cask strength is like really kind of perfect, really showcases that level of smokiness. And I think it's a really great kind of all-rounder in that regard.
I love that. I always think it's so fascinating that Scotch single malt, it's malted barley, water and yeast,
Yeah, three
fermented,
flavors, like,
distilled twice, and then aged in oak casks. However, they're all different, and that sense of place and culture always seeps through into the whiskey. And I think you've kind of highlighted that perfectly with Highland Park and Orkney.
Yeah, I think the cool thing always with whiskey is, I, being from Scotland and uh, not living there currently, but being very proximate to it, you have a relatively small country, 6 million people, 7 million people, but you have about 150 distilleries, from ones that are 200 plus years old to ones that came up in the last couple of years. There's such a range of flavors and expressions and textures. When you meet someone who's like, I don't like whiskey, you don't like whiskey yet. Like, you could, there's no way that you couldn't find something you liked. And that's, I think, what basically, as an ambassador, that's basically your job, right? Is to like bring people in, show them that it's much bigger and more diverse than they realize, and kind of just take them on that journey. That's kind of my whole job.
So I just think this is a fabulous whiskey, but I've also noticed that we've had a lot of comments, and I think everyone's beat me to it, and they've started adding in water already. So I imagine you're a bit like me, and you think just let people drink whiskey however they want. But with something like this, with such a high ABV, I think by adding water, you will be rewarded with some more flavour. So I wonder if you could just dig a little deeper on why I might think that.
Yeah, you're certainly not spoiling anything by adding water. So, I think one of the appeals of cask strength whiskey is you have a whiskey that you get to kind of dilute to your preference. Certainly, none of the flavors, the aromatics, the compounds that we've spent time kind of building up through the distillation process and the maturation, none of those are jumping out the glass. You're just bringing the ABV down to whatever you're comfortable with. So yeah, I think it's very commonplace, and actually it's quite traditional in Scotch whiskey single malts to add a little bit of water to bring down that ABV. But also, some people find that it changes the aromatic kind of structure of the whiskey. I don't have a chemistry degree. I didn't complete university. That's why I'm a whiskey ambassador. But I've heard some convincing stuff about that. And frankly, I think, yeah, whatever gives you the most enjoyment out of your whiskey, you should probably do.
Yeah.
Unless that's adding, full fat Coke to your whiskey. Maybe maybe dial that back. At least while I'm online, and then you can do whatever you want once I've logged off.
It's just what I just think, especially with whiskies of this high ABV. So whiskey tends to be hydrophobic, as in it doesn't like water. It causes that exothermic reaction when you do add that water, and it starts to really open up some more flavors. And I can really tell with this one that there's going to be a lot in there, which I think is really fantastic. Thank you so much again for sharing Highland Park with us. I am going to let you go because I do appreciate it's incredibly hot in London, but thank you so much for sharing your whiskey with us. And I hope you have a lovely evening. So thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much. Yeah, I can't believe I wore a black t-shirt. That was such an error of judgment. It
Well,
was
I'm wearing blue,
so
so
warm. Yeah.
have a lovely evening. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you again soon.
You too. It was great talking to you guys. I hope you really enjoy your whiskey. So thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, that's so wonderful. I really hope you guys enjoying Highland Park. Unfortunately, we've had some technical difficulties, so it will just be Highland Park this evening. But I will work with the Whiskey Me guys, and hopefully we can try and arrange something for you, because I was really looking forward to getting into the next whiskey, which is actually an American whiskey. So that would be quite interesting. But yeah, please bear with us. Sometimes these technical issues do happen. But thank you so much for joining us. I do genuinely love doing these shows, but I wish you a lovely evening, and try and stay cool. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.